live, I'm going to start with the introductions here. All right, so good evening and happy Thursday, everybody. I hope you're having a good week so far, staying safe. Here in California, we just went into another lockdown and a curfew, and so things are looking a little bit dicey. In the meantime, are you looking to move into a new career? Do uncertain times and everything going on during these last couple of months have you seeking safe refuge in something new? With the explosion of personalized online experiences, user-generated data, and businesses wanting to deliver the right products, data analytics and data science have exploded as a career path, with almost 39% more jobs, according to IBM. Individuals in this industry command a median starting salary of $95,000 and a mid-career salary well into the six-figure range, meaning that you not only have the opportunity to learn new skills and lead in your organization, but also achieve financial freedom. Over the past 7 months, we've seen a lot of data science jobs on Albert's list. And today we've teamed up with learnanalytics.org, a data science education company, to bring you a panel of data scientists moderated by Jackson Au, who will share their career experiences. Jackson is part of learnanalytics.org and is a data science professional with 6 years of experience in healthcare and education, and he currently works as a data scientist at West Coast University, spending the majority of his time bettering the student experience through data discovery and statistical methods. Some quick housekeeping before we begin. We ask that you please mute yourself so that we don't have any odd sounds coming through. If you have any questions, place them in the comments section, either if you're on Facebook here in the Facebook comments or in the Zoom chat. And the webinar will be recorded, and we'll be putting up a recording on YouTube in the coming days. As a final disclaimer, the opinions of our panelists do not reflect the views of their employers. You may have noticed that some of them come from top-tier companies, and so any opinions they share on this may not be representative. Jackson and the panelists, welcome. I want to just give it over to you, and thank you again for your time tonight. And I look forward to seeing what the panelists have to say.
Awesome, Albert. Thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you all for being here tonight, spending your Thursday night with us. That must mean you're into data or you're interested in data, so welcome. I'm a full-time data scientist during the daytime, and then on the side, I love just helping out with learnanalytics.org. We create content where we help others like you guys get into data, how to get your first job as a data analyst, scientist, engineer, ML engineer, partnership manager.
Have you heard of Quillbot?
Quillbot?
Yeah, it's like a...
If you can, please do mute your mics during this time, as other people will hear you. But just to go further along,
Jackson, I'm going to go ahead and hit mute all, and
okay.
then you can unmute yourself, I think. So
okay,
there we go. Yeah.
Again, you can find us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Spotify. I'll drop a link below so you guys don't have to look for it as I'm interviewing these wonderful people. In terms of the format tonight, we're going to do something more interactive. I know sometimes you guys go to events, 95% of the time, the host, the panelists are talking and talking and talking like I'm doing right now, and you're just kind of sitting on your hands, twirling your thumbs. And so I don't want to do that. I want to break this into 3 parts, and between the parts, we're going to stop, pause for break, and allow you guys to ask questions, so it would be more interactive. And so just to test that out, I'm going to share something cool right here, so we could just do some interaction with you guys. Oh, do you guys see my screen?
Yep, I can see you.
Okay. Yeah. So what I want you guys to do right now is kind of follow the instructions. And so go to www.menti.com and then punch in that code and then answer the question of how would you rate your experience with data? And I'll give us maybe 1-2 minutes to kind of punch that in. Once I get to about 40, or I'm being ambitious, if I get to 30 results, I'll kind of stop.
And I like the beginner circle. That's
Cool. So the reason why I wanted to do this was, one, I wanted to interact with you guys. I wanted the panelists to kind of understand the types of people that they're going to be talking to today, so they can kind of cater their answers to where you guys are in terms of your skill level. So I'll stop sharing here, and we're going to start today or tonight with introductions. So the order that I want us to go in for introductions, I'll type it right here. And then what I want you to do is just kind of share, and we'll start with Sarah tonight. Just share about a little bit about yourself and what you do for your job. So,
thanks, Jackson.
Yep.
Hi, I'm Sarah Mayer Platt. I work as a data partnerships lead at Tempest Labs based in Chicago. It's a precision medicine startup. And my focus really is on patient health data and creating data sets that's useful in pharmaceutical research. A lot of the assessment work that we do is around the health of the data set, data quality, ensuring that the product that we're passing along, either for internal research purposes or pharmaceutical research, is a useful, valuable piece. So I'm excited to talk to all of you tonight and tell you more about my work and my path and learn something from you all as well. Thanks. Looks like Henry's next.
Yes, I'm next. So hi everyone, my name's Harry. Harry Liu. I'm currently the data analytics manager in Spotify. My day-to-day work is basically developing and driving the data science initiative within Spotify, especially on the compliance and legal domain. Before joining Spotify, I was in a pharmaceutical company called Johnson & Johnson, and I was doing fraud investigation for most of my time. So currently, frequently working with local authorities, FBI, legal firm, and Big Fours. I'm happy to meet everyone.
Hey guys, I'm Jennifer. I'm currently working as one of the data scientists for Petco. And my day-to-day role involves analytics around customer. So it's mainly falling into the marketing data science. So I do analysis and build models around predicting customers' life value and also their churn or also their cross-shopping behaviors. Prior to that, I worked in Chewy as a program manager of analytics. So I think I'm pretty comfortable with pet retail and e-commerce industry, and looking forward to share my experience and learning from you guys. Thank you.
Hey everyone, my name is Mikiko. So currently I'm in a bit of an interesting spot where I'm transitioning from working as a data scientist focused on growth marketing and decision science for Livongo, which was recently acquired by Teladoc. And we focus on empowering people with chronic conditions to live their best lives by essentially aggregating, analyzing, predicting, and making actionable the insights that we get from devices like blood glucose meters, hypertension meters, all that stuff. So we're very much a device company that came to some prominence during COVID with remote monitoring. So I'm transitioning from that to working as a co-founder for a real estate startup called Sidewalk, where I'll be focusing a little bit more on the machine learning engineering aspect of that.
Cool. Thank you guys so much for introducing yourself. So what we're going to do for our first part is sort of understand maybe the backgrounds of some of our panelists and what got them intrigued or interested in data themselves. And so the first part, you can kind of just listen in, hear about their stories, and maybe you can relate to them and say, hey, like, that sounds like me. I can get into data myself. And so I'm going to kick us off. If you want to take notes, feel free to grab a notepad, pen, Post-it, you name it. So we're going to kick it off with Sarah again, same order. What maybe a hobby and interest, what pulled you into data?
Well, I come from a medical family, so my career path has been very healthcare oriented rather than data oriented. I initially was thinking that I would follow that same clinical path. My my father's a physician, my mom's a nurse, and I actually worked in healthcare for a little while as a caseworker at a mental health agency. But I found that there were so many limitations in terms of the approaches that you could take with patients. The options, the resourcing was often very strange, and I wanted to do something about that and expand the sort of opportunities that were available to clinicians. So from there, I moved into clinical research, but the pace of clinical research is often very slow. So from there, I moved into the startup world. I worked previously in healthcare market research. Now I work in precision medicine, but just seeing the pace at which this data, the decision making is taking place. We're not reliant on clinical trials that are coordinated over years and years. We're looking at real world data coming directly in from EHR. There are just so many advantages to the amount of data that we're able to assess and the resources that we can pull from when we approach data in this way. And that really, it felt for my skill set and my level of interest more meaningful to me to follow in this path.
Yeah, and I have a pretty similar, I would say, take with Sarah. Means that, I was starting as a fraud investigator working with law firms, and from time to time I ask myself a question, after I get escalation or allegation that I have to investigate, I would say, and at the time I would ask myself about, like, who else is doing these kind of things, what else going on. And at the time we did not have so much data to play with, so it's basically, we got a case, we solved the case, and that's all. But then that kind of drive me into, hey, can we use data analytics or data science to do more preventive methodologies versus currently, everything is investigated and we spend a bunch of costs just to mitigate those risks. And that kind of drives me into the data analytics. And after a couple of good victories, I think they kind of prove the point about we have an effective control over those compliance aspects, and data science can be a very good tool about that.
For me, I actually came from a business background. My undergraduate degree was in supply chain management. So it's a business background, but also has a lot of industrial engineering aspect of it. So when I first graduated, I thought I was going to be working in a manufacturing side, something like that. But then I fell into data by working at Chewy. And in e-commerce, there's a lot of data, and every day trying to solve problems, we have to use data. And that's how I learned to use programming languages like R and SQL. And that's why I wanted to learn more about what technique is the best to use data in an efficient way, and also how can we analyze it so that our assumption is not flawed based on random chance, but also what's actually significant. So that's how I got into data.
Yeah, I'd say for me, it was kind of moseying my way into data, sort of just swaggering in, trying a bunch of different jobs in a bunch of different areas. Like I think my background's a little bit non-traditional in that I've probably, every single like job that I worked was like slightly more data-ish than the other job. And it was also in an area like, for example, my first job was working as like a growth hacker slash like sales ops person. Then the job after that was working in like business ops, doing like model monitoring, right? Where I wasn't deploying machine learning models, but there was a data scientist who was, and I would essentially go in and I would like hand label all the training data. Then the next job after that was working as a financial analyst, focused on like modeling sales planning and forecasts, like for a solar company. And then, I kind of just like crept my way in there. And a huge part of it was like I had to take time to figure out what was it I really wanted to do. And I think when I, graduated college like X number of years ago, I'm not going to date myself. I don't want people to know how old I am. But when I got out, like, out of college, like X number of years ago, I think DJ Patil, I think that's his name, right? He had just come out with that article going, data science is like the sexiest job of the century or something like that, right? So I don't think at that point there was really even adoption of like data science. And I think analytics was still continuing to develop. Tableau, I don't think was even that widely adopted. And so I think like at each point in time, right, like a year in Silicon Valley time is almost like 10, 15 years, right, in any other industry. So like every year it was just developing this like maturity and understanding of like, okay, this is what analytics looks like for a company. This is what data science looks like. And this is more and more what I wanted to do as opposed to like strategy and operations. So it's kind of like, boop, 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 all the way into data.
Got it. Yeah, thank you guys for sharing. And so it sounds like from the panelists, like you guys come from all sorts of different backgrounds. Like there inevitably somehow, some way, you guys found yourself in data. And so this question is for Sarah and Harry. Like you guys mentioned a lot about your healthcare background, your fraud detection background. If you start there, are you just shut down and just siloed into that bucket, or can you always transfer into data? Like what are your thoughts around that? And whoever wants to take it can take it.
Sarah, you want to go first, or?
Go ahead, feel free.
Okay, cool. So for me, the answer is definitely yes. You can definitely transition from one domain to a more data science focused domain. To me, I think myself is an example where I started from fraud investigations, compliance into more data science driven. The way I would describe this is that the data science, it's not a rocket science, and you can definitely apply those in your current domain. Means that you don't have to spend like hours of hours learning a new business acronym. But on the other side, what you could probably do is kind of deploy your data science knowledge into your current domain. I think that would be also super helpful. Yep.
I totally agree. And the only thing that I would add is that whatever previous experience you have or experience outside of the data world that you have, it's only an asset. It only can inform the work that you do. I think we all described our past. We all described this process of learning a little bit along the way. And, there are some things that are really objective, I should say, about data work, but there are a lot of things that are also subjective and decisions that you're making, interpretations that you have, and all of that experience can come together and inform those interpretations. So it's a great thing if you're coming from a different space and you're interested in moving into data.
Yeah, it sounds like we're coupling or leveraging your existing domain knowledge to kind of make you a better data person. That's what I'm hearing from Harry and Sarah. Thanks for sharing. So when I first started with pursuing data scientists, exactly what Makiko said. I heard about from DJ Patel, like data science and analytics. Data is like the sexiest thing out there. And like, I'm like, oh, I'm into sexy things. Cut me in, I'm in. And so Makiko and Jennifer, you guys have very different paths. So we're going to dive into that today. Jennifer, when I think of data scientists and when I first started, I thought about a guy, a woman with a lab coat, just mixing data in their little flask jar and trying to come up with concoctions and experiments. Is that exactly what you thought too when you started your data science journey. Like, tell us about like how you got to where you are today.
Okay, so that's actually a pretty contradicting take that I had. When I first, before I stepped into my data science role, actually, I initially didn't want to take data science role at all when I was still working at my previous job, because a lot of the data scientists there, they always seem to be so stressed out in a way. So I was like, oh, this is maybe not the job for me. But how I think that opened my eyes to data science is that I saw the need of the business. Initially, in my previous role, I did a lot of past trend analysis, just like Harry. So I did a lot of analysis where things already happened. But in my mind, I want to be able to prevent this from happening. And so that's what I got into predictive analytics. And a lot of the roles for that actually is called data scientist. But in different companies, obviously, it's called different things, but it's more about what kind of problems you want to solve. In my case, I want to be proactive instead of, of solving something that already happened.
Got it. And did you want to share about, I think you did school, right, Jennifer, to get to where you're at? How did you decide that school was for you?
Yeah, so what happened was at work, I tried to solve a lot of problems on the go, again, because my background was more into the management side of the business, and I didn't really have that much experience. I took statistic classes, and I used some of the methodology to do analysis, but at the same time, I don't think that was enough to actually solve the business problems. So I did learn it on the go. I learned coding on the go as per job required, which is great. But at the same time, it's not optimal because, when you're working, obviously there's a deadline. You need a certain amount of thing at a certain time. I don't feel that it's optimal. And for me, I've decided that going back to school was the right decision for me because first of all, I get to build all those foundations that I think I missed, and also get myself more exposed to predictive analytics in the domain that I'm more interested in a little bit more. So yeah.
Got it. And then Makiko, I think you went a little bit of a different route compared to Jennifer. Did you want to share a little bit about how you decided to go the route that you went?
Yeah, totally. So one thing I will say is that decided implies potentially that I had more options than I did. And for better or for worse, I don't want to say I was one of those that was like too cool for school, because that's not quite it. During like my undergrad education over at UCSD, there were just like a lot of personal things that happened in my life, like, my dad getting cancer, and, I had to work a couple jobs, to afford college, and even with like financial scholarships and all that. And I think also I was like, I went into undergrad thinking like, oh yeah, Asian tiger parent, I'm gonna be a doctor, and like that didn't happen, right? Like it's the holy trinity, right? I think, and this is not just true for Asian communities, right? But I think for every parent's dream, it's like doctor, lawyer, engineer, maybe private equity, right? Like that's, let's just make it a square, right? So that was like kind of their dream, and I think my dream was always to like help people in some form. But when I was younger, that meant, okay, I'm going to be a doctor and go work for like Doctors Without Borders. So of course I get to like the biomedical engineering program over at UCSD, like managed to pretty much fail my way out for like the next 5 years, and then I land on economics and anthropology because that, well, one was like the only major that would really kind of take me at that point, but also it was super interesting. But it was super interesting. I loved game theory, understanding how people worked, because that's mostly what anthropology is. It is the study of how people operate in groups. How do they sort of behave around like incentive driven resources. So a lot of that kind of like, it was very interesting. I had no idea how I was going to make it work as a job. So, but what that also means, right, is that pretty much there's not a single graduate program under the sun that will take me, which is basically what a lot of grad programs told me. They're like, look, you have a 2.7 You had a 2.6 undergrad. And probably one of the, besides English literature, besides one of the, probably not so quantitative majors out there. And it was interesting because like I had a point where I was very depressed. I was like, oh man, like, no one's gonna take me. And I made this comment to my partner. I was like, man, it's just like they're kicking me out like a dog in the street, which is sad. Like, but that's how I felt. Because like basically every grad program I had like looked at, including the ones online for Coursera, were just basically like, you could get a letter from like the CEO of Autodesk, which is where I worked at that time. And they're like, it would not make up for, your academic record 5 years previous. So I think at that point I was kind of like, I am never endorsing formal academic education ever again. But okay, so I still need to like build up the skills, right? So at that point, there's a couple options. One was I could do like the in-person boot camps, or I could do one of like the online programs. So I ended up deciding to do an online program because like, number one, it's I wanted to keep working and keep bringing in money. You know, and then the in-person ones, like I didn't really have like the safety net to like quit and go like work on it. And it's like something that like I think when people are thinking, what program do I sign up for? I do think, especially now with COVID, that is something really to consider. It's that I think data science for me was a very worthwhile career pivot, but I do think that like there's no underestimating like maintaining liquidity, right? Especially right now. So that's like the route that I chose. So I went the online bootcamp route, with supplementing with like online learning resources like DataCamp, like Coursera, like Kaggle Learn. So I wouldn't say I'm like self-taught, but I definitely did not go through like the academic, like the formal academic route. And I'm actually super grateful for that. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah, just hearing from Jennifer and Makiko, it just sounds like it boils down to your sentiment, right? Like where you guys are at in life, financially, where you guys are at. Are you bringing in income? Like if you are, school might be a possibility, but bootcamp is more flexible on the financial side of things. So these are just a bunch of things to consider as you're thinking about mulling over school, bootcamp. So great, that was part one. Like I said, I want this to be interactive. I want this to be fun. So I'm gonna share a screen here to allow you guys to send your questions in. So give me a sec. And then you guys could tell me when you guys see my screen. Good. Same thing. I'm gonna boss you around for a second. Go to this website, punch in the code, and then through your phone or your browser, you can just punch in your questions for us. I guess while we're waiting, what are your guys' takes on mentorship? Like, do you guys value mentorship? Because for me, I think feedback is huge, and so I was just curious about like what you guys thought.
So I can pick on this one. So the first thought I had is, I'm 100% supportive of it. So in Spotify, we do have this mentor-mentee program. And actually, I had a couple after I joined Spotify. So like, I'm in the data science domain, but if I have interest in the backend engineering, I can, pair or shadow with someone to learn those specific knowledge that I probably wouldn't touch or learn in my day-to-day work. So definitely support this.
I would say the same. It doesn't even necessarily have to be someone in a similar data role, just having someone in your corner, either at work or outside, who can advocate for you and help you navigate these big choices. Online boot camp or going back to school is so valuable.
Got it. So I'm not going to be able to. Good thing we're recording.
I love all the questions.
Yeah. Which ones stick out to you guys? Like, do you guys want to tackle any of these? Makiko, maybe to just follow up after the boot camp, how difficult was it for you to land the job? What was that journey like? So did you do anything after the boot camp? Oh, your eyes are bubbling up like it was really hard or something.
Yeah, totally. And funny thing is, I'm looking at these questions, and I think we'll actually probably end up covering a bunch of them later on in the program.
Okay.
So yeah, so for everyone who asked those questions, I think you will get your answers. But in terms of like the difficulty and the interesting is that like it's funny, I have there's some people on the call that are part of the some of the programs I've mentored at. So number one, I'd say mentorship is great. Mentorship helped me a lot. Okay, so I did two programs. One was Springboard's data science bootcamp. Some people have asked me why I didn't do the machine learning one. It's because at that point they didn't offer it. But and there's reasons why you would want to do one versus the other. If I were to go back now, I would probably do the ML one, just because now I understand that like my interest is in the engineering and the crafting of data products, as opposed to like inference and causal analysis and more like the strategic side. So I did Springboard. I did that for I took 8 months. It's supposed to be a 6-month program. They felt sorry for me for this 2 months because I was working full time. After that, I did a program called Data Science Stream Job. That one is not a boot camp. It's another mentorship style program where they focus on the job searching aspect of it. So for example, resume reviews, doing like your data science portfolios, also like doing practice interviews and things like that. So I'd say between the time, so Springboard, I joined onto it. I took 8 months. If you guys do it like full time or all that, it could take as little as 2 to 3 months. I took a long time. From the point that I finished it, then I did data science stream job just because I needed like a little bit of an extra boost. I tend to get very nervous public speaking and in interviews. So that helped a lot. That was another 3 months. And I think that's when I got my data science offer. And that I would say was my fourth or fifth job in my career, with every job being like, a year or less. So.
Got it. Yeah. Guys, some of these questions that you're writing here, like what are some of the key skills that I'll need to be successful for data analytics, data science, machine learning? We're going to cover that in part 2. So I structured this so that the first part, you're kind of just getting to know our guests. Part 2 is skilling up and like what are the types of skills that you'll need? What are the types of skills in candidates that we look for or Harry looks for, Sarah looks for during their interviews. So we'll get to some of those. Here's a fun question. What are the type of people that would enjoy a career in data? I'm tempted to say normal people, but what are your guys' thoughts on that?
I would say, the type of people who love to discover things that usually hidden. It's not necessarily hidden in the data, but hidden and not, cover and not showing in our day-to-day work. So like, my work, I like to discover insights from data outliers. And every time I found those, I got excited and totally enjoyed it. So that's kind of my take.
I can answer that too. I would say I agree with Harry. I think someone who's curious. For me, how I got into even writing code was like on my previous role, I didn't really need to do it. I can ask some of the analysts to do it for me. But at the same time, I was like, I spent 2 hours every day after I finished my work to just look at the data and see what other problems could there be, and starting to talk with some of the process owners to see if I can help them with solving that. So yeah, curious people.
Sarah, did you have something to add? Your mouth was moving like you were ready.
I mean, I agree with everything that's already been said. I would just add, I guess, a level of persistence. It is hard. There's a definite learning curve when you get started. and just continuing on with it and leaning on others as much as you can is the way to move forward.
Yeah, I agree. I'd say the advice I have is just start. I think when we look at such a monumental goal or gigantic goal of becoming a data scientist, it's just easy to just shrivel up and say, hey, like, I don't want to start. Like, no, thank you. But I think taking incremental steps, that A to B to C is the way forward, because I think when we think about tackling that big goal, we think we have to go from A to Z immediately. But as you heard from Jennifer, Mikiko, Sarah, and Harry, they took these baby steps to get to where they are today. So yeah, that's kind of my take on things. So we're moving on to part 2, which is skills. So I definitely recommend you guys take out a notepad for this section if you haven't already. I think the question I have for the panel, and we'll go in the same order, Sarah, Harry, Jennifer, Mikiko. What did you do to get to a competent skill level for the job you have today?
I think the thing that really pushed me to the next level was kind of jumping off of what you just said, Jackson, like finding opportunities to use data. So the job that I had was in marketing, healthcare marketing. So I, inherently I was working in customer success, not talking to customers, not really making ads, not really inherently involved in the analytics side at all. But I kind of like Jen went to the people that were the analysts, and I found portions of my own work that I could automate and build out, just like my own personal projects. And I think that's true if you're working, you can do that. If you're not working, there's tons of open source data sets that you can use to kind of start your own personal projects. Data.gov is a huge government one. You could create your own data sets based off of your own interests or work. But just getting started and kind of creating your own projects made a huge difference. I just learned so much through doing that, through creating my own use cases, I should say.
Yeah, totally agree what Sarah said about finding opportunity in your day-to-day work. One thing I would add is instead of just looking for opportunity in the day-to-day work, I also very enjoying in one thing it's doing knowledge transfer to my colleagues. So means that every time I learn things, maybe on online boot camps, even YouTube videos, I bring that back to my colleagues, to my team, meaning that I have to know how to teach them, means that I probably would already digest enough to the knowledge that I'm learning from bootcamp. So that's another thing I would definitely do. So look for opportunity in the day-to-day job, and I also do knowledge transfer for them. The other little things that I found it really helpful is to understand how you obtain your data. So in my domain, everything is compliant. So attorney-client privilege is everywhere. Data is usually sensitive. So I have to knock so many doors to get my data ready. So that's when the communication parts come in as a data scientist. Like you have to tell your good story. You have to tell your good thesis to make sure people can understand the value of the data science project you're doing and how you can add the results back to the team. I think that's another thing I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, I completely agree with both Sarah and Harry. Finding opportunities very important, and that's actually how I got into this role. Like I brought in my old knowledge, domain knowledge, and then with new skill set, I'm able to solve the problems that I used to not be able to solve right now. So it's definitely a plus point. And for me, it's communication is also key, and most importantly, how do you QA your work? Because as a data scientist, a lot of your codes, when you productionalize them, obviously you're gonna have to be able to not just communicate with the business owners, but also other data scientists in your team, or potentially the BI engineers. So most importantly, you have to make sure that you QA it, and that's actually 80% of my job. And you guys probably heard it. It's mostly writing the code and validating the data.
So I mean, in terms of upskilling, I would say I my upskilling strategy was different depending on where I was in my career. So let's say, for example, you are someone who uh, okay, so here's a good one. So let's say you have the skills, and you just maybe don't have the experience working with problems and you're employed. Finding like getting access to data at your company and just like finding a small, not even a problem, but maybe like something interesting. Like, let's say you work at a company, you have access to data, and you're like, I just want to know, for example, like basically how well do people like our product. Maybe you want to like learn more about your company or the business model. Like that's a really great way to like get your hands on like a starting project. And the nice thing too about like, even if you don't have like a data title at work, as long as you have access to it, that's like one way to kind of like really easily start building that chops, especially too because like you can kind of like pick in a way from the questions that are available to you. It makes it much easier to kind of like frame what kind of analysis you want to do. Right. So there's times in my career where I was in that position where I had access to the data, I had the skills, but maybe I didn't have like that like data title on my resume. That's like one really good way to sort of like step into like a data role, do a little bit more of like a lateral transition. Now, let's say, for example, you're someone who has access to the data and you don't really have skills. And that is totally okay. That's also been me many times. I did not have like the right set of skills. Then what I would say is like, first kind of like identify what is your bottleneck. For example, are you having access, like just getting data to work with, like querying it? Then that could be a good time to work on SQL. Let's say you have really good SQL skills, but you don't really know, okay, like how do I like analyze it? That could be a really nice time to just find like a very simple tutorial on like how to pull data into like a Python notebook or Google Colab, and then just like follow like the tutorial on like an analysis package and then to work with that. So it's, I think part of like the upskilling process is identifying what is that like key bottleneck to you learning. Now, let's say, for example, you're someone who has neither, unfortunately, has access to data, or maybe you don't have a job, and maybe you also don't have the skills. That was also me very early on in my career. Yeah, like I was homeless. I didn't have the skills for a bit of time. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So one thing you can do is, first off, you can go to Kaggle.com. Kaggle is a site that will do these free data challenges. Sometimes they also pay out money. And I don't know about you, but I love money. So they have an option called Kaggle Learn. It's a set of tutorials. So what you can do is you can find data off of there. You can do one of the tutorials, do a walkthrough, and you'll get an understanding of like how to build out that like first initial model or that first initial analysis. And the nice thing too is that for a lot of these analyses, you don't necessarily need like a fancy computer. Sites like Kaggle will allow you to use their GPUs or their CPUs or their compute power to run some of that analysis on your own. And so that's kind of what I would do when someone is thinking about like, how do I need to upskill, is identify kind of like where you are and what your next bottleneck is. Is your bottleneck, not understanding kind of like the kinds of questions you can ask with your data? Is your bottleneck the skills in like gathering and analyzing it? Or, is there another sort of like bottleneck? And that's how like I've kind of approached my like upskilling sort of strategy.
Cool. Yeah. Let's say some of our audience members are in high school, college, or they don't even understand what the word data means. Like to them, it's just a 4-letter word. What are some of the technical skills that a data analyst or data scientist might have? And maybe we have Sarah and Jennifer take this one.
I can kick it off, or you can, Jennifer.
Go ahead.
I mean, I'm struck. There's like the obvious skills that we're all trying to build. Mikiko just listed a few in terms of just working with SQL to drop data and then inputting it into a Python or Jupyter notebook to apply some Python analysis. But there are also some more, I don't know, it's soft skills, more interpretive skills that I think are really important, and maybe in some ways more important, because you can always learn that other stuff. But I don't know, I'm thinking about exactly how to qualify it. I think it sort of harkens back to the persistence I mentioned earlier, just having a, there are a lot of things that can go in a lot of different directions when you're doing this type of work. You can walk into a project with a plan and uncover something new within the data that you hadn't expected, and open up a whole new line of assessment. And that level of persistence and willingness to really struggle with the data and figure out what's going on is what'll get you there.
Yeah, I agree. I don't want to repeat what Sarah has said because I think it covered almost all of it. I think what's really important is obviously domain knowledge, but if you don't have a domain knowledge, obviously your curiosity and problem solving skill would take you really far. So I'd say keep being curious and use data to answer question. So come up with the questions that you want to answer, then like Mikiko said, build the skills that you need to answer those questions.
Very good. Yeah. When I'm mentoring folks who are starting their data careers, it really centers around, and this mirrors the business, right? What are you trying to solve? And then SQL, Python, R, those are just the tools to solve your problem. And so it's just having that mindset of understanding, okay, I'm solving a problem, how? And then you use those specific technical tools to kind of push you through in terms of analysis. Great. Sarah, Jennifer, thanks for sharing. To close us off in this section, Harry, what do you look for in data science candidates? And what are some key skills that they must have?
So for me, when I look for candidates, I'll look for key areas like, their communications, their basic knowledge about statistics, programming language skill sets, and then their business economics. From people, from person to person, some of them are probably strong in business language, but not so much on programming. Some of them might be really good at stats, but not really good on the communication side. These should be considered as a normal, because I think there's no such perfect data scientist personality sitting just right there, and we all have something we are good at and something we're not good at. And again, in Spotify, most of the time our Spotify data scientists are not working under solo work, unless it's a side hacking project or something like that. But most of the time we're working in groups. So some of them might be really good in visualizations. Some of them might be really good at pipelining our data structures. And that's kind of answer this question. So when I'm looking for candidates, first I definitely look at those 4 key elements: communication, statistic, programming language, and business knowledge. And I will take a look at what our business is looking for. So if we're looking for someone who is really, we really need a strong communication side and really strong on the statistics sides, we might look for a data scientist who is really good at doing not in machine learning algorithm, but someone who's really good at data storytelling, Tableau, actually, Power BI, these kind of things, more of the data storytelling side, because that's what we need. So yeah, to answer that question, I guess, first I look for the candidates 4 key elements, and I look for what we need to make sure we build someone that could work with the team, and not looking for someone who is perfect on every aspect.
Cool. I think I missed this question for the panel. I think tonight we've gone through a lot of the cool and like the very pizzazzy parts of data. But I think what I wanted you guys to share is like, what's something you reckon is the hardest part about what you do day to day?
I can start. So my most difficult part is to deliver my data science insights. And due to the nature of my background, sometimes we have to deliver bad news to the business based on what we discovered. And again, it's gonna be an art to have our business to understand why we can trust this machine learning model, why we don't, we rely on this versus manual review, why we do these yada yada versus that. That's the most difficult part for me, is to communicate and kind of build a bridge between the business side and the machine data science side.
I can take it. So for me, I think I've mentioned it earlier. For me, it's preparing the data before we can even do anything with it. So basically QAing it, making sure every features that were created were what we want it to be before being able to even deploy it into any machine learning or algorithm or even an analysis. Just preparing it, querying it, and QAing it, running it. Those are, I wouldn't say, well, the hardest based on the amount of time it consumes, because it takes the most amount of time. So yeah, that's my take.
I would add to that, missingness also in the data. When you think you're going to be able to approach a problem one way and you don't have enough information to really pull it all together, oof, it takes a lot of time, as Jennifer said.
Yeah, I'd say like the hardest part, we're talking about the hardest part, right? Of working as a data science. Okay, I was like, is it the funnest part or like the hardest part? So I think the hardest part, and someone actually brought up this like interview piece, is that a lot of different companies and even hiring managers have a very different perspectives of like what a data scientist or an ML researcher or ML engineer or data analyst should look like. So sometimes you'll see roles where it's like, for example, title a data analyst, and you're like, this really sounds like a senior data scientist if you're asking them to like build and deploy models in production and then to do monitoring and testing and evaluation of the model results. This does not really seem like a data analyst role, because like, where's the strategy and like feeding the information back to the business? And then sometimes you'll see like roles that are like data scientists, and you're like, this really seems like you're asking for a lot of like strategy and business domain and like product business model knowledge and to make strategic decisions. This really seems like it would be more of an analyst role. So I think like, sometimes like in the Valley, because we're still sort of defining what those roles look like, and because different companies are at different like stages of their maturity, it can be confusing even when you first get into a job to understand like what is the expectation for you. But I think like once you kind of like understand like, okay, this is what they really want, and you're able to understand like, is this like a strategy role? Is this an inference, causal analysis, experimentation role, or is this something where they really want to like send out like a product? Like, do they want like engineering quality? Then I think things get like a little bit easier, but sometimes you'll still have that kind of like miscommunication, or that difference in expectation. And I think sometimes that can like, when you're talking with a business partner and they're like, well, why can't you do this? It's like, because that takes like engineering cycles. That takes a couple sprints. We can't just do that. But you still have to like, you can't just say no. You have to provide them like another option, right? Like, are you sure you really need like a full dashboard, or do you just need like a report that's sent to you via email, like once every week or something? So like that communication piece is pretty essential, especially when those roles are still being developed.
I want to add a little bit to that. I completely agree, because in the business, a lot of the time you get asked a very high level nebulous questions, and it's about how do you narrow it down into the kind of answers that the business owner needs. So a lot of the time you deliver something and they go back to you, they say, well, can we look at it with XYZ instead, and things like that. So it's really important in the development process, you keep really close in touch with your owner and know who your audience are and what metrics or what kind of information that are important for them, and that's how you get to narrow down those really high nebulous questions.
Yeah, as I couldn't help but laugh when Makiko was sharing about how expectations can always go this way and you're expected to go this way. And Jennifer she was ready to unmute her mic and she's like, yeah, I agree with that. Because with data, it's a very adaptive field. Like you might be expected to do A, you might be expected to do B. And the great thing about these boot camps and grad school is that they prepare you for these things. If they present you a problem or a capstone, you can always ask your capstone mentor or your bootcamp leader, hey, like, what are you expecting out of me? What result are you expecting out of me? And that's the key here, guys. Like data-wise, like you want to kind of understand what the business problem is and then kind of regurgitate or kind of repeat back to them, hey, is this what you want? And I think Sarah, Harry, Makiko, Jen, and I, we are constantly asking questions, and that's something you'll find out about the data field as well. Speaking of questions, we're going to take a break here for part 2 of questions. So give me a second. And guys, we're not going to be able to hit every question. Just I'm going to apologize right away, but send them in anyway. And what I'll do is I'll work with Albert after this and see if we can kind of consolidate a lot of these questions, and maybe we can like spit it back out to you guys in terms of the questions we weren't able to answer for you guys. So send them in anyway, and then revisit Albert's list or the Facebook page, and we'll be able to provide you guys some answers. As we wait for additional questions, I think one question I wanted to ask the panel was, gosh, when I started, I had so much self-doubt. I had so much so many moments where I wanted to just give up. Like you're digging, and it just feels like wherever you're headed towards just seems so far away. And so like, what kind of kept you guys sane in terms of, hey, like I really want to get there? Was it a mindset thing for you guys? Like what helped you, guide you, and push you through?
For me, it was about, so it's like a mindset thing. So actually, when I started trying, I made the decision about transition my career into more data science career. I actually did a couple of things. So I subscribed a bunch of YouTube, exactly YouTubers, like, data scientists, but YouTubers, like understand how their day-to-day looks like. And I do a lot of readings on blogs. There are some of the good platforms, online platforms also offer podcasts of data science, and trying to understand what that will look like would give you a good encouragement and inspirations about keep doing it every day. So make that as a routine and continuously doing it.
I can take it also. For me, obviously, it was really hard, especially coming from business degree as a background. Even though I was working in analytics for about 2 years before I decided to go to grad school, I thought, oh, okay, the transition will be easier, but apparently not, because of my undergraduate degree in business. What really helped me was working on my portfolio. So it's a way of showcasing what I can do. Resume alone doesn't really tell much. Obviously, what happened in the past already happened, just like what Mikiko said. But what I can produce with this short amount of time that I've used to learn all these skills, I'm able to do these, and these things that matters to your business. I think that's what really can sell you up as compared to other people. So do Kaggle. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the things that helped me were like, so first off, so there's like the skills and the project components. Like, absolutely, if you don't have the work experience, you need to have a portfolio. You need to have a portfolio. You need to have a portfolio. I'm sure I said that enough times. And that doesn't necessarily mean like a personal website. You don't have to go through all that trouble. It can just be like a GitHub with like really well documented READMEs. GitHub now has an option where they do like a special username README where you can do like something fancy with like a profile and all that. But you need to have at least like a couple projects in there. And it doesn't have to be more, honestly, it doesn't have to be more than like 2 or 3 projects. If you do 2 or 3 projects that are like super well done, you know, code is clean, analysis is like nice, it's very well structured. Even if you have like code coverage tests, that would be amazing. If it's a working app, you can also use like something like streamlit.io. That's the cool thing that's been going around. And it's basically a library where you can just like literally surface up like your model or your analysis, right? You know, and you make like, once again, like you only need like a couple. If they're really, really well done, most people will look at it and go like, yeah, that's great. So I'd say like the portfolio like is super, super important. But I would say like also too, like to some degree, you need to be like you need to be mentally and emotionally strong when you go into, you know, the data science, analytics, machine learning job search. And I think something that helped me was like, so first off, if you have a non-traditional background, like, you know, there's like 25% of companies where like you go in there and you're going to know immediately you're not like a good fit because they'll say like you need to have like this and this pedigree, and you just have to be okay with it, right? Like not every company is going to love you. They're going to look for like specific things, and you can't change your history. You just can't, right? So I think you just accept, like before you start, that like there are people who are just, you know, they're like the ivory tower, you know, like eggheads. They want to keep like data science kind of this like closed field, and you're just going to have to just ignore those people, right? So that's the first thing. I think second thing too is make sure you're always like having something to work on. The data science job hunt can be really, really, analytics, data science, machine learning job hunt can be really, really hard. I think for most of the people I know, it took them like a minimum of like at least like 3 to 4 months, like minimum. For a lot of others I know, it took them like, it could take as long as a year. You know, so you need something productive to like work on during that time. And so that's where these like Kaggle or datathons can be like super amazing. They're a great way to network. I know like I did 2 or 3 of them randomly. And the nice part is like if you see this like person that you've like, you know, coded with for like, you know, a month or whatever, they can probably actually speak to your skills far more than like someone random on LinkedIn. And when you have that network, you can get those like referrals. So I would say like you might think, oh, well, I need the skills to like go to a datathon or a Kaggle competition. No, you don't actually. It should be the opposite way around. You should be focused on projects. You should be focused on those datathons and those like challenges. And that's where you will like generate those opportunities to get those kinds of jobs, especially if your network is not already like sort of data heavy. So
some of the questions that came in were about interviews, how to prepare for an interview, how do I get through a technical if I'm a complete beginner? Does someone want to take that one?
I can take it. I mean, the experience still pretty fresh for me. So basically what I did was I did a lot of like quizzes online. There's a bunch of resources online. Maybe Mikiko can point you out to specific links or places too. But I did LinkedIn quizzes. I did data cam interview coding classes, interview coding classes, and then yeah, I even try to write my own questions just to practice. So I think timing yourself while you do those and then do the online readily available quizzes for technical interviews would really help. And also read a lot of blogs. I would point out the blog that I read a lot was Analyticspedia. They have a lot of like data science, analytics interview questions, case and technical.
Cool. And then maybe this is similar to that one, but where can these folks start? Like, it sounds like Kaggle is a great place to start for these people to explore. Is that the go-to, or is there anything else you guys want to add to where can I start? Because I feel like some of these folks are complete beginners, and so I was just curious if you guys had like thoughts around that.
So the almost like the first thing that I do after I start to do my transition is I start to work on the visualization part. So visualization means that you already have, a bunch of good quality of data, and what you need to do is just kind of play with it and make sure that your data storytelling is good. So I think for a beginner, that's probably the most easy part, because you don't need to do data cleansing. You don't even have to have programming language. So visualization tool, there are a bunch of things in the market like Tableau, academic, or Tableau education. I think that so there are a bunch of software that can have you start with your visualizations, and then through your learning path in a visualization, you will start to discover things like, not every time you got good quality of data. So you have to understand how you do visualization, you do data cleansing and data blending before visualizations. And then after you learn that, you probably have a little bit Python skill or R, and then you start to say, hey, maybe I want to scale up to machine learning. So that's kind of how I build up my step-by-step learning path. So it might be helpful.
Cool. Okay. Some of these questions, again, like I said, we're not going to be able to hit, but then we'll try to answer them on Albert's Facebook page. But originally, I wanted to give us a maybe 2-3 minute break. But do you guys think we should just power through this? You guys got the juice to do it? I think we have like 20 minutes left. Yeah, we're good? Okay, let's hang in there. So I think Albert really wanted me to ask this question. Are you guys hiring? So at your companies, like, are you guys hiring, and what for? Yeah.
So I can start. So Spotify is hiring. We have a variety of the data science or data analytics and even business analytics role that happens within our platform BU, our consumer BU, and content BU. And then for the domain that I'm having, like compliance and legal, internal audit, we also are start to kind of equip and expand our data science squads. So yeah, check out our company websites, and we have not just US opening, but global opening, because we're expanding our market. So take a look.
Tempest too, we have the Chicago office I mentioned. We also have a San Francisco office, New York, I think Atlanta now. So just it's all on the website. Machine learning opportunities, data science, NLP team. There's actually a real world data scientist opening that is, the work aligns pretty closely with my role. And while I know I spoke a lot about my interest in healthcare and healthcare data specifically, if you don't have that healthcare background, they would still welcome you and your insights.
Yeah, so Livongo / Teladoc / InTouch, they did 2 acquisitions in a very short time. They are gearing themselves to be the mega remote health monitoring, censoring, doctor call on demand service. They want to conquer everything medical. So they will be hiring for data science, or for data analytics, data science, machine learning, data engineering, ML engineering, and I think data ops is the same as data engineering, but I'm going to be honest, they just closed like the merger a month ago. So we're still not sure what the official team names are. They will all be hiring. So look them up. And then my startup, we're going to see if we can actually just, make it work for the next 3 to 6 months. And then we will hopefully hire, because hopefully we have money. So.
For Petco, right now we're not doing any interviews because this is in the middle of holiday season. So it's like in retail, it's like the busiest time of the year. But we will start hiring again early next year. So be on the lookout for that. The roles will be senior data scientist, or senior analyst. For the senior analysts, a lot of the time they would ask you to know Adobe Analytics, but for data scientists, obviously you would need to know SQL and Python.
Got it. Thanks for sharing. In terms of a data science or a data analyst starter kit, Harry, you volunteered to answer this question. So in terms of a toolkit or, 3 things you would recommend to our audience today, like what are some things they can do immediately after this call to, in terms of action items, like what do you recommend to these folks?
Yeah, I will say, so I was, one of the audience who almost joined every these kind of data science talk and career panels. And I always kind of didn't do anything after I listened to it. I was like, okay, this is really helpful, and I'll just go back to my work. So I really want to use the chance to kind of list off some of the very easy, almost effortless things to do it. And I think some of it has been covered, like, doing Kaggle, Coursera, LinkedIn platform. So that's one thing I wanted to bring up. So use those online free or paid platform to start to build knowledge. But I also do a lot of things like, just playing the LinkedIn learning training videos at the background, or just YouTube videos saying a data scientist work in the background, and just listen to it. And I don't know how much percentage I'm getting it and learning from it, but that kind of sink me into the environment where I wanted to totally transit myself from a full-blown compliance investigator into a data scientist. So I think these kind of things, is kind of effortless, and you can do right away and start to get yourself into those keywords, terminologies, and kind of get familiar with the language that data scientists would say. So that's the second thing, like, kind of give you that environment. And the third is to work on I guess it's probably similar, like, have your own portfolios, but the portfolio here, I mean, it's not super like, super technical or rocket science machine learning model, but something similar. And the one thing that I would totally recommend is those online open source data, which probably already been cleansing for educational purpose. So, there are a lot of popular data, like, we probably already know the most famous iris data, where you get to predict the type of the iris flowers. So these kinds of the data can get you away and avoid a lot of difficulties, and have a good victory at your first data science projects. So I totally recommend to start with those simple stuff. And then, after you finish those levels, you start to see, hey, the real world data might be that much beautiful and clean. And I guess Sarah will totally agree with me, because in healthcare, like, everything is probably, not nice and a little bit dirty. So yeah, start with easy, cleansed data, and then build on that. So that's the third thing I want to share.
Cool. Thanks for sharing, Harry. This is probably one of my favorite questions that I put on here is, I think right now we're being really friendly to you guys, and like, this is how you start. This is, this is where you should begin. But the question I have for Sarah and Makiko is, like, if you were to be completely honest, brutally honest, in fact, to our crowd, like, what is the advice you would give them? So sort of adding on to Harry, like, what's your brutal advice to our crowd today?
I can go first. I mean, we talked a lot about or not a lot, but a little bit about some of the struggles we have, particularly around data cleansing or making a case for a new project to operations or business level individuals that don't always see the value right away. I think the honest feedback I would give, or advice, is just not to romanticize the work and the role. It's really easy to think about and get excited about, this innovative work that you can do, and you are doing that. But there's a lot of hard stuff too, and I think there's a lot of different aspects of the work that you can focus on, whether you are an analyst, or you are a data scientist, or you're working in machine learning, or you're working on an NLP team, or you're kind of straddling a few of those areas, or you're really focused on data cleansing like me. But what is really difficult and challenging to one person is really exciting to the next person. So don't get deterred by, there's a good fit for each person. It's just trying to negotiate what are the struggles that are the true struggles for you, and what are the things that are the true pieces of excitement for you. I see Harry smiling. So.
Yeah, so I guess like if I was to be, okay, so there's two different groups, right? Maybe three groups that I would be hard on. So one, people who are sort of already like let's say like they're working in a data type role, or and they're very, so one of the types that I think people don't really, so the business side doesn't really like, is the data science or machine learning people who like go in a corner, tinker around with their really like cute little models, like, oh, I did something really unique and interesting. And then they're like, okay, great. Now like explain it back to the business why it was actually valuable. And then they're like, oh, you were just like not smart enough to like understand what I did. No one likes those. No one likes that personality. No one, no one, no one, no one. So don't be that person. Because like at the end of the day, like data science and machine learning is really cool. Like there are so many things that are really cool about the field, but you are there to make your organization money, or if you're working for a nonprofit, you are there to help them meet their KPIs. Like that is your goal. So if you're already in that role, like kind of get over your personality. Like seriously, no one wants it. Now for the group that is like just trying to, is like working on like the interviews, I actually don't want to be hard on you guys because it's already hard. It's already hard. What I would say is like, if you really feel like this is like the thing for you, like just keep pushing on it. It sucks, you know? Um, yeah, it's never not sucked when I've gone through like the process. For the people who are kind of like thinking about it, like I'm gonna give you like the kick in the butt. Like seriously, go do it. Like we all have like one life to live. Like, and you're going like, oh, should I do this? Should I do that? Like just go sign up for a class. Like go do a project. Go test it out. Like don't just like wait for it. Like because if you think about it, like let's say it takes someone like 3 to 5 years, to like really get into the field. Like or yeah, let's say 3 years, right? To like get to a point where you're really enjoying the gains of your field. Like, so it's 3 years from like whenever you decide to like start the process. So seriously, like go do it. And then I'd say for like people who are just sort of like, who are like thinking about it and haven't tested it out, like really understand why is it you're doing it. Like, because I've mentored at like some of these programs, and I've had the good fortune experience to mentor people at all kind of stages of their maturity, right? And running to data science and machine learning, it will not solve issues like, for example, if you don't know how to advocate for yourself, right? Maybe you actually, what you'd really want is a promotion. You want more leadership. Running to data science machine learning will not solve that because you're kind of just going to start sort of at the grunt level. Maybe you want more money. Honestly, there are other jobs that pay way more money. Like the people that you hear that are raking in like 2.1 million as like machine learning researchers at Google Brain or whatever. Realistically, they have like 2 or 3 PhDs, and they've also published like 30 or 40 papers and all this other stuff, right? So like, and also as a sales rep, you can kind of like, I think some of the enterprise sales reps at the startups I worked at, they were probably raking in like 500. Some of them were like raking in like 500K a year, and like they just basically had an undergrad degree and like a BA in literature. I know this one guy who did that. He bought a new house after like 2 new houses after like 5 years working in sales. So it also can't just be about the money. Like it has to be about the work. And you have to be prepared to like do the hard work. That is why we get the autonomy. That is why we occasionally get the respect, of leadership. That's why we get the creativity, is because, all of us who got here, like we did the hard work, whether the hard work was in undergrad, whether the hard work was in graduate school, or whether the hard work was outside of it. Like you have to be prepared to do it because like we all went there. So, that's like my hard in that group. For people who are job searching, like my heart is out to you guys. Like it's really hard. This is a really tough time. Luckily, if you can break into data science, from what I've been seeing, it has suffered honestly less than a lot of other like role functions. So it does seem like data science is in analytics and machine learning is kind of here to stay. So
Cool. Thanks for sharing. Yeah. Just to add to Sarah, Harry, and Makiko, I think I want to leave you guys with two things. I think the first thing is compare yourself to yourself. Like if you're comparing yourself to us or someone else, right? That's not a fair comparison. Like all you can really do is compare how you are today versus how you are yesterday. Yesterday, you might not have attended a panel interview like this, but today you did. Like those are incremental gains that you can look at and say, hey, like I'm making progress here. And then two, action cures fear. Action cures fear. Like I think you guys are in a place right now where you're kind of scared. Is this something I want to dive into? And we were all at one point at the same place as you guys are. Like Harry was just talking about, hey, like I used to be the guy going to these places and I wouldn't do anything after, but eventually he got over that fear by taking action. And I think the same thing with you guys, just take those baby steps and you'll get to where you want to be. So I'll leave you guys with that. I do want to leave a little bit of time for questions. And I also want to take this really quick poll. So hang on for a second while I share my screen. All right, so again, just go to this website and these are so cute. And then I will start in 5 seconds. It's just a poll. It's a fun poll, actually. It's a really cute poll, actually. Anyway. I don't know if anyone's on the website right now, but you have 13 seconds to let us know how you would rate tonight's career panel. And if no one's on the website, that's okay. I'll just kind of drop and improv and we'll go from there. Sweet. Everyone's right, by the way. Even that person who said it wasn't helpful, you are also right. This is still feedback to us. You're letting us know like what you thought of tonight, but that's great. I'm glad this was of help. I think that means a lot to the panelists too, because they took their time, they sacrificed their Thursday night when they could have been watching a cool Netflix show to spend their time with you guys to introduce you guys to data, like the hard stuff, the easy stuff. There's no such thing as easy stuff, but how to get started and kind of how to kick off your portfolio and start off your data career. So Albert, I don't know how we are doing on time, but how much time do we have left for questions?
You have 8 minutes left, so feel free to ask more questions. I think the chat is really lively tonight, and I'm really loving it. And I'm learning a lot too.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, if you are shy, go ahead and punch it into the chat, your questions. I believe earlier there was a question about, hey, like starting out, like what should I do? Here's a shameless plug. Someone is asking, hey, like how do I get started for getting into a data analyst role?
While we're at it, actually, before we keep moving forward, can the panelists put their LinkedIns, if they haven't already, into the chat? And maybe if you have other ways that you're open to connecting, let's do a little bit of networking as well.
Yeah, let's do that.
Sure. Cool.
Yeah, I was just saying earlier, someone asked about, hey, like how do I get my first data analyst job? LearnAnalytics.org, we actually run a YouTube channel, and I think we made a video specific to that question. So I just dropped like a YouTube link in there for whoever asked that question. Let me go back to the question slide and I'll ask our panelists other questions. Oh, there's a question about portfolio. So Makiko, I know you mentioned some stuff, some things should be in the portfolio. Do you want to add anything, Jennifer? You can add things to the question too.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so I've seen a ton of recommendations out there. Okay, so first off, okay, okay, actually, let me just answer like the 2 or 3 sub questions I normally get asked. Number one, do you need a million things in your portfolio? No. Aim for fewer but higher quality projects. Okay. Number two, what does a high quality project look like? The nice thing is I have a lot of examples of high quality projects. So if you really are interested, feel free to like ping me on LinkedIn and I can send you some like copies of projects I've seen on the web. The other nice thing about Kaggle.com is if you go there and you look at the beginner competitions, they will have like, for example, they have a Titanic data set where it's like predict the mortality, you know, who survives, right? Did this person die? I mean, technically they're all dead now, but like, did they die at the, you know, time of the crash? Because like that's a data set that has been just like so well explored and well plumbed. A lot of people have notebooks on there where they've done like a full on project. And so don't be ashamed of like using a data set that people have already used. That's actually really good because first off, you can compare your code and your analysis against what other people have done when you're learning. That is really, really super helpful. You don't need to like reinvent the wheel when it comes to like learning the foundations. You know, so I'd say look at some of those, especially the ones that are like upvoted the most. Those will be a pretty good indication of like kind of what would be the expectation. And you can also look at something called cookie cutter data science. They have like a sample template of what a really blown out project could look like, and you could just do a really simple one. Now, in terms of the hosting platform, GitHub is kind of the de facto, but I've seen a lot of people do really cool stuff with their public Tableau profile. That's totally acceptable too. Especially if you're going for an analyst strategy role, that's fantastic. It shows number one, you know Tableau. Number two, you know how to rename columns and add filters. You would be surprised how much that question comes up. Yeah, but GitHub's still great. Tableau public. Oh, you can also host notebooks on Kaggle as well, and you can also use Google's Colab. These are notebook environments with Google Colab. They'll let you do some amount for free to get access to data sets that they already have. And once again, there is no shame in using a data set that is well explored, that's out there, that's been well documented. You know, it also helps interviewers too, because they're like, oh yeah, I know this data set really well, so they know what what to expect. And then you can use something like Streamlit if you're a little bit more advanced. It's very similar to a library. A lot of good stuff out there. So I would say like kind of check those out for the portfolio. And then also always make sure to tie it back to LinkedIn. People don't put their projects on LinkedIn and then they expect the recruiter or like the hiring manager to go click through. And it's like, no, like less clicks to get to the essential information. So make sure you do a nice, well integrated profile. That'll help a lot.
Before Jennifer, I know I called on you for this question. I think this is maybe an appropriate question for you. It's someone who's been working with Python a lot, and they currently work within DevOps. This is Christopher, and he's asking what he needs to do from a data science perspective to have a career as a data scientist. And so maybe this ties along with the portfolio question. Like, what's your advice to Christopher?
Yeah, it depends on what kind of area of expertise you want to dive into, because like there's a lot of things that you could do with data science, right? It really depends on which area of the industry you want to do, because it's really easy to overwhelm yourself otherwise. So if you're not sure, you can, again, it's back to Kaggle, look at the different problems or what kind of use case you can do with data science. And from then you can build upon your skills. Okay, maybe it's in marketing data science or customer analytics. Then you can probably build more upon skills that you lack. So be honest with what kind of skills that you lack. For example, you're very used to the data manipulation and data cleaning, and that you're good there. But for example, if you're like me, I didn't really have a sophisticated math background, and that's what I really hashed on. So before even that, make sure you be honest with yourself what skills you're lacking and find your area of interest. That way it keeps you motivated, and then build your portfolio upon it.
Thank you. And Harry, I think we have a last one for you. For data analytics managers who spend most of their time in management meetings, like how do you keep up with your skills from a data science perspective? Or do they not matter as much compared to leadership, initiative, strategy skills?
I wish I could say just reject all those meetings, but apparently not. What I did is actually I had a lot of times just learning after my work. So yeah, I usually have like 7-8 meetings, or we call like quick syncs. So like some of the meetings are really short, but I tend to use like early morning, sometimes like 5 to 7 in the morning, just to kind of looking at the blog to see what else are working. Sometimes internally, like Spotify's, there are some of the cool hacking ideas, or just looking through those GitHub portfolio to see what else is working on. I think those are really helpful. But yeah, to balance that, you probably have to do those outside of your current, 8 to 5 working time, because you got full-blown bombarded by meetings. But I enjoy doing those.
Awesome, thanks. Thank you, panel, so much for being here and again spending your Thursday night with us. I really appreciated your advice. I learned a lot. Albert, did you want to close us out, or?
Yes, I can absolutely close it out, and definitely. So once again, thank you everyone, and thank you Jackson and panelists for joining us. For those of you on the line, really appreciate you investing some of your Thursday night into your career. And just to add some funny story actually for me, I almost went into data science myself 5 years ago. My mother walked into my room New Year's Eve 2015 or 2014 and asked one last time if I wanted to go to an engineering career, because I'd been in marketing for about 5 years. And I told her no, and that was that. So this is the closest I've come to it since then. It's just pretty funny. If you enjoyed this event, we have other events coming up. And coincidentally, actually, our next event is on Monday night. It is a data analyst mock interview with Corey Hiramoto of careershakers.com. And so if you're interested in joining the data science career and you want to also learn what it's like to interview within the career from a general recruiting mindset, that opportunity is available for you. The event is on Eventbrite, where you found this particular event. And so we definitely invite you to join us for that. Tickets are available now and free. We also have a couple of other events coming up. On Tuesday, December 8th, we're going to do a live resume review. So this is with a recruiter. You can come join us. We'll do it right live here on Zoom, and you'll get feedback there to help you get noticed. And on December 15th, we're doing another webinar on hacking LinkedIn to have opportunities come to you. And so all of these events are on our Facebook community. They're also on Eventbrite, where you likely discovered this event as well. And we'd like to invite you to all of these as we get through to the end of the year, prepare for 2021. And really, 2020 has been a drag, so let's all do what we can to get into our best year possible. If you aren't in Albert's list, we also invite you to join that community, where you'll find jobs, advice, success stories, and just tips and tricks to help you get to the next level in your career, wherever you may be. Above all, within your career and everything else, remember to pursue greatness. It is the only thing that pays. Thank you again, everyone, for attending. We'll see you all soon, and we appreciate your time. Bye-bye.